I'm going to ask Mr. McClendon and Mr. Smith, you both mentioned in your testimony that U.S. natural gas production is up while demand has remained relatively flat, but prices are still high. And many American families are already worried about paying for their heating bills this winter. Will prices come down substantially as more and more of this natural gas goes into the system? And will expanded use of natural gas, as we've heard from Mr. Wells in the vehicle sector, have an impact on pricing for home heating, heating purposes, if there is that expanded demand for it? Mr. McClendon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First thing I would say is that gas production has actually been increasing for the last 3 years at a compounded rate of 6%.
Over the last 3 years?
Over the last 3 years on a compounded rate. Before then, for 5 or 6 years before then, gas production was flat to slightly declining. This year looks like we'll have the industry's best year in modern history. We'll be up probably 9%, and that's the equivalent of 4 or 5 BCF a day of new production in the U.S. So do we have enough natural gas to meet all these new needs for natural gas? We see demand going up for natural gas, for electricity. Certainly it's become harder and harder to build a coal plant these days. It's difficult to build a nuclear power plant. And our view on that is simply that gas is there, it's clean, it's affordable, and we think it ought to be used. With regard to whether or not there's enough to fuel the automobile industry, right now if you were to move 2 million cars to natural gas, that would be about 1% of the U.S. Car fleet. We think that would increase natural gas demand by about 0.75%. So the Emanuel Boren bill seeks to increase demand, or seeks to increase the amount of cars in the U.S. that run on natural gas to 10%. We think that that would require only about a 7.5% to 8% increase in demand for natural gas. And again, that's over 10 years. And in the context this year, our industry will increase production by 9%.
Let me talk. Can I talk for a second about using natural gas to generate electricity? We will have, in some manner, shape, or form, legislation that passes here over the next couple of years that is a cap-and-trade system that puts some price on carbon. How much of these new discoveries can be used in order to make it possible to retire dirty, old coal-generating plants, and as a result, help us to meet whatever commitments the United States makes in the Copenhagen round?
Well, the American Clean Skies Foundation today released a study that had been performed by Navigant Consulting, which the authors of that report have concluded that over the next 20 years you could begin to retire the dirtiest of coal-fired power plants and not affect the price of natural gas, again, because of the amount of production increase that we have.
Do you know how many megawatts they're talking about in terms of retired coal-fired plants?
I don't, but you have about 500,000 megawatts of installed power. You use about 400,000 of it in all.
On a daily basis?
Right, yeah. All incremental, most incremental megawatts.
So is it possible that 50,000 new megawatts of natural gas electrical generation or 100,000 new megawatts of electrical generation is possible?
Right now, 20% of all electricity is made from natural gas, and that only consumes about 25% of natural gas in the U.S. So if you're increasing natural gas by 5 to 10% per year, you can add tens of thousands of megawatts a year and not impact.
So is it possible, in other words, to reduce from 50% the electrical generating capacity for coal in the United States down to, let's say, 35%, and to increase the natural gas electrical generation from 20% up to 35% of our total needs, and as a result meet the big climate change goal that we would have?
3 years ago, I would have said no. Today, I say yes because of the technological breakthroughs that has occurred in drilling for natural gas into these shale deposits.
So with the supply available, how long do you think it would take to make a transition like that?
I'm not an expert in that. What I'm an expert in doing is telling you that I believe that we can increase the supply of natural gas.
You're saying the supply will be there to
at least 5% per year. How the market decides to use that, whether it be for cars, whether it be for electricity, whether it be for more plastics and chemicals, I can't really comment on, but I think the surprise that I have for people today is that The technological breakthrough that we have developed in finding gas from shales changes everything about what you think about natural gas scarcity in America.
Thank you, Mr. McClendon.